Now we come to another sutta, 3.7.70. On a certain occasion, the Exalted One was staying near Savatthi in East Park in the terraced house of Nikara's mother. Now Visakha, Nikara's mother, on the Sabbath day, that is the Uposatha day, came to visit the Exalted One. On coming to him, she saluted him and sat down at one side. As she thus sat, the Exalted One said this to Visakha, Nikara's mother. Just stop for a while, just to say that Visakha is the famous lady who is the one of the strongest supporters of the Buddha and the Sangha, the company of monks, and she was considered the greatest supporter among the women. She's also known as Nikara's mother because the father-in-law is a man by the name of Nikaya, and the father-in-law used to call her mother because she taught him the Dhamma. So the Buddha said to Visakha, "Well, Visakha, how is it that you come at noon?" And Visakha said, "Lord, today I am keeping the Sabbath, or the Uposatha, that means the 8 precepts, on the 8th lunar day, the 15th, the 23rd, and the 30th lunar day." Then the Buddha said, "Well, there are these 3 Sabbaths, Visakha. What are the 3? There is the herdsman's Sabbath, that of the naked ascetics, and that of the Aryans." Now what, Visakha, is the herdsman's Sabbath? Suppose, Visakha, so the Buddha said, "Suppose, Visakha, the herdsman in the evening restores the cattle to their owners. Then he thus reflects, today the cattle grazed at such and such a spot and drank at such and such a spot. Tomorrow they will graze and drink at such and such a spot. In the same way, some Sabbath keeper here thus reflects, tomorrow I shall eat such and such food, both hard and soft, and he spends the day engrossed in that covetous desire. Such, Visakha, is the herdsman's Sabbath. This Sabbath of the herdsman thus spent is not of great fruit or profit. It is not very brilliant. It is not of great radiance." I'll just stop here to comment. Here you see the Buddha is in a way joking with Visakha. He's saying there are some people who keep the 8 precepts, and because they keep the 8 precepts, after noon, between noon and the next morning, next dawn, they are not allowed to eat normal solid food. So because they cannot eat in the afternoon and the evening and night, they're longing to eat, and they think of all kinds of food, and they think tomorrow when I'm not keeping the 8 precepts, I'll enjoy this and I'll enjoy that, which I think happens to some people. So this is the Buddha's way of joking in a way. And the Buddha continued, "And what, Visakha, is the naked ascetics' Sabbath? There is a sect of naked ascetics, so-called a sort of recluses, who exhort a disciple thus, Now, my good fellow, lay aside the stick as regards all creatures that exist eastwards beyond 100 yojanas, 100 leagues. Likewise, westward, northwards, and to the south. Thus they exhort them to kindness and compassion towards some creatures only, but not to others. Then again on the Sabbath they exhort a disciple thus, Now, good fellow, off with all your clothes and say, I have no part in anything anywhere, and herein for me there is no attachment to anything. Yet for all that his parents know him for their son, and he knows them for his parents. His children and wife know him for father and husband, and he knows them for children and wife. Yet for all that his slaves and workmen know him for their master, and he in turn knows them for his slaves and workmen. Thus at a time when one and all should be exhorted, it is in falsehood that they exhort them. This I declare is as good as telling lies. Then as soon as that night has passed, he resumes the use of his belongings, which had not been given back to him really. This I declare is as good as stealing. Such, Visakha, is the Sabbath of the naked ascetics. The Sabbath of the naked ascetics thus spent is not of great fruit or profit. It is not very brilliant. It is not of great radiance. I'll just stop here to comment. I see sometimes the Buddha also can be quite critical. I think there were some naked ascetics during his time who used to do this, and he's criticizing them. And here he's saying that there are some people who practice the Sabbath on a certain day, practice the Uposatha, they keep the precepts, they even take off all their clothes, and they say they have renounced everything. But the next day, they take back everything. So in a way, what the Buddha is saying here, that he is that he does not encourage temporary ordination. Temporary ordination did not exist during the Buddha's time. It is only something that is practiced nowadays, where somebody becomes a novice monk for 2 weeks or 3 months, something like that. But during the Buddha's time, it was not allowed. So when you wear the robe and shave the head, you're supposed to renounce all your belongings, because if you, nowadays what people do is they go and ordain for a short while, but they still have a bank account, they still have property in their name and all that. So it is quite different when you have all that property still in your name. There is no feeling of renunciation. It's quite different from a person who totally renounces everything. And because to renounce everything is quite a drastic step to take. So a lot of people have that fear. And the Buddha continued, and what Visakha is the Aryan Sabbath? It is the purification of a soiled mind by a proper process. And how is it done, Visakha? In this matter, the Aryan disciple calls to mind the Tathagata thus: He it is, the Exalted One, the Arahant, who is a fully enlightened one, perfect in knowledge and practice, a well-farer, world-knower, unsurpassed charioteer of beings to be tamed, teacher of devas and mankind. A Buddha is the Exalted One. As he thus thinks of the Tathagata, his mind is calmed, delight arises, the stain of the mind is abandoned. And here there are certain sentences are deleted to make the sutta a bit short. Again, Visakha, the cleansing of the soiled mind is done by a proper process. How is it done? Herein the Aryan disciple calls to mind the Dhamma thus: well proclaimed by the Exalted One is the Dhamma. It is a visible thing, independent of time. It invites one to come and see. It leads one onwards. It is to be understood by the intelligent for themselves. As he thus thinks of Dhamma, his mind is calmed, etc. The stain of his mind is abandoned. Again, Visakha, the cleansing of the soiled mind is done by a proper process. How is it done? Herein, the Aryan disciple calls to mind the order or Sangha thus: well conducted is the Exalted One's order of disciples who walk uprightly, walk in the right way, walk dutifully, namely the 4 pairs of human beings, the 8 sorts of human beings. That order of disciples of the Exalted One is worthy of respect, offerings and gifts, worthy of being saluted with clasped hands, a field of merit unsurpassed for the world. As he calls to mind the Sangha, his mind is calmed, delight arises, the stain of the mind is abandoned. Again, Visakha, the cleansing of the soiled mind is done by a proper process. How is it done? Herein, the Aryan disciple calls to mind his own virtues, virtues that are unbroken and whole, unspotted, untarnished, giving liberty, praised by the intelligent, virtues untainted, which lead to concentration of mind. As he thinks of his own virtues, the stain of mind is abandoned. Again, Visakha, the cleansing of the soiled mind is done by a proper process. How is it done? Herein, the Aryan disciple calls to mind the devas, as heavenly beings. Thus, there are the devas of the 4 great kings, the devas of the 33, the devas of Yama's realm, the happy devas, that's to Sita devas, those that delight in creation, those that control the creations of others, those of Brahma's company, and those who are still beyond that. Such faith exists in me, just as the faith blessed with which those devas deceased from this world and were reborn in that world. Such virtue as theirs exists in me, such religious knowledge as theirs exists in me. Such is my generosity, such is my wisdom. As he thus calls to mind the faith, virtue, religious knowledge, generosity, and wisdom of himself and of those devas, his mind is calmed. Delight arises in him. The stain of his mind is abandoned. Then that Aryan disciple thus ponders, as long as they live, the Arahants, by abandoning the slaying of creatures, are abstainers from the slaying of creatures, have laid aside the rod. They are modest, show kindness, they abide friendly and compassionate to all creatures, to all beings. So also do I abide this night and day, abstaining from such actions, showing kindness to all beings. By this observance, I too imitate the Arahants, and I shall have kept the Sabbath. As long as they live, the Arahants, by abandoning the taking of things not given, abstain from stealing. They take only what is given. They wait for a gift. They abide in purity, free from theft. So also do I myself abide. By this observance, I too imitate the Arahants, and I shall have kept the Sabbath. As long as they live, the Arahants, by abandoning impurity of life, dwell observing chastity, abstaining from unchastity, from sexual intercourse, women matters. So also do I abide this night and day. By this observance, I shall have kept the Sabbath. So just now I wanted to make a comment here. The third precept, observing chastity. Here, because we are dealing with the 8 precepts, there's a slight difference from the 5 precepts. In the 5 precepts, the first 3 are almost the same as this. The first is not killing, not stealing, or actually it's not taking what is not given. And then the third one here in the 8 precepts is abstaining from sexual intercourse. But in the 5 precepts, it's abstaining from adultery, not to commit adultery. That means not to engage in sex other than the lawful wedded partner. So to continue, the Buddha said, as long as they live, the Arahants, by abandoning falsehood, dwell abstaining from falsehood, speaking the truth, joined or fixed to truth, unswerving, reliable, no deceivers of the world. So also do I myself abide this night and day. By this observance I shall have kept the Sabbath. As long as they live, the Arahants, by abandoning indulgence in liquor, fermented and distilled, which gives occasion to sloth, are abstainers therefrom. So doing, I also abide this night and day. By this observance, I shall have kept the Sabbath. I'll just stop here a while to comment on this taking intoxicants. The standard for monks and lay people is slightly different. For lay people, if it's medicinal, you can take, if you desire, some medicine which contains some liquor, if you feel that it's necessary. But for a monk, it is not allowed. In the monk's Vinaya, the standard is slightly more strong. That means if there is a smell of liquor, there's a taste of liquor, then a monk is not allowed to take it. But some monks feel that sometimes it may be necessary if there's a slight smell or taste of liquor, but that's up to them. But sometimes in certain foods, there can be liquor, but provided the smell and the taste is not there, it's alright. For example, sometimes lay people cook a cake for the monk, and they put some liquor in there, and when they cook the cake, it kind of dissolves, and you don't get the smell and don't get the taste, and it's alright. Or sometimes in some dishes they put it, as long as there's no smell and taste, it's alright. Then the Buddha continued. So long as they live, the Arahants live on one meal a day, abstaining from food at night, refraining from food at unseasonable hours. So also do I myself this night and day. By this observance, I shall have kept the Sabbath. I'll just stop here to comment on this again. This taking one meal a day was the original standard in the Buddha Suttas here, and also in the Majjhima Nikaya. You find that the Buddha told his disciples, at first he allowed them 3 meals a day. Later he allowed them 2 meals a day. Later he allowed them only 1 meal a day. And but then for most people, if they take 1 meal a day, they find it a bit hard. So the Buddha did give some allowances, some drinks and some certain kinds of food that are considered nourishing and allowable as medicinal, of having some medicinal value. For example, butter. And some monasteries, they also interpret it as cheese or milk, and other things like medicinal fruits, medicinal roots, medicinal vegetables, etc., and fruit juice, etc., and honey, and even the oil of fish, oil of bears, oil of alligator, I think, oil of pigs, and certain other things were allowed by the Buddha. So with these other allowed foods, then a monk can practice. Otherwise, if the stomach is too empty, then it's very difficult to practice. You try to meditate at night, and the stomach is protesting. You have to continue. The Buddha said, as long as they live, the Arahants refrain from going to the exhibitions of dancing and singing. I also, by so doing, shall have kept the Sabbath. As long as they live, the Arahants, by abandoning the use of high, wide couches, abstain therefrom. They make their bed lowly on a pallet or on a spread of rushes. I also this day and night do likewise. By this observance I imitate the Arahants, and I shall have kept the Sabbath. So this, I just stop here to comment again. These are the 8 precepts. The only thing is I like to comment is here the interpretation for all these precepts. Sometimes we have to be practical. For example, sometimes this precept against sexual intercourse. Some people sometimes interpret it as not even being able to touch a child of the opposite sex. I think sometimes it's a bit thinking a bit far. Sometimes old ladies, they have to look after the grandchildren, or their children. And if they keep the 8 precepts, it doesn't mean that they cannot touch their son or their daughter or their grandson or granddaughter. The precept here is very clear. It is abstaining from sexual intercourse. And then the Buddha said, such Visakha is the Aryan Sabbath. A Sabbath thus observed is of great fruit, of great profit. It is brilliant. It is of great radiance. How so? Just as if Visakha, one should exercise lordship, rule and sovereignty over these 16 great provinces, replete with the 7 gems, namely the Angas, Magadhas, Kasis, Kosalans, Vajyans, Malas, Chetis, Vangsas, Kurus, Panchalas, Machas, Surasenas, Asakas, Avanti, Gandhara and Cambodia. Yet would such sovereignty not be worth 1/16th part of a Sabbath observed in all its 8-fold parts? I just stop here for a while. Just now the Buddha mentioned these 16 provinces of 16 states in India existed during the Buddha's time. So the Buddha said, all of them, even if you become king of all of them, it's not worth 16 part of observing the uposatha, the Sabbath, keeping the precepts. And the Buddha said, what is the cause of that? A poor thing, Visakha, is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. That means human rule, sovereignty. Now, Visakha, 50 years of human life are a single night and day to the devas of the 4 great kings. 30 such days and nights make a month. 12 of such months make a year. 500 of such years make up the life period of the devas of the 4 great kings. But there is the possibility, Visakha, that some woman or man, by observing the Sabbath in all its 8 parts, when body breaks up after death, may be reborn in the company of the devas of the 4 great kings. It was in this connection that I said, a poor thing is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. I'll just stop here to comment. In the heaven of the four great kings, 50 human years is a single day and night. So to know the lifespan, you take this 50 years, multiply by 30 days in a month, multiply by 12 months in a year, multiply by 500 years, you get 9 million human years. That means lifespan in the lowest heaven, which is the Chatumaharajika, the devas of the four great heavenly kings, their lifespan is 9 million human years. But to them it's only 500 years. And then the Buddha said, again Visakha, 100 years of human life are but a single night and day to the devas of the 33 Tavatimsa. 30 such days and nights make a month. 12 of such months make a year. 1,000 such heavenly years make the life period of the devas of the 33, which actually works out to 36 million human years. And the Buddha continued, but there is the possibility, Visakha, that some woman or man, by observing the Sabbath, may be reborn in the company of the devas of the 33. It was in this connection that I said, a poor thing is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. 200 years of human life are but a single night and day to the Yama devas. 30 such days make a month, etc., etc. 2,000 such heavenly years make up the life period of the Yama devas. But there is the possibility, Visakha, that some woman or man, by observing the Sabbath, may be reborn in the company of the Yama devas. It was in this connection that I said, a poor thing is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. I'll just stop here to say that this Yama devas, their lifespan in terms of human years is 144 million years. That's why the Buddha said human life is nothing to set beside heavenly bliss. And the Buddha continued, 400 years of human life make one night and day of the Tusita devas. And 4,000 such years make up the life period of the Tusita devas, which actually works up to 576 million years human. But there is the possibility, Visakha, that some woman or man, by observing the Sabbath, may be reborn in the company of the Tusita devas. It was in this connection that I said, poor thing is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. 800 years of human life make one night and day of the devas that delight in creation. And 8,000 such heavenly years make up the life period of these devas. But there is the possibility, Visakha, that some woman or man, by observing the Sabbath, may be reborn in the company of the devas that delight in creation. It was in this connection that I said, a poor thing is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. So their lifespan in terms of human years is 2,304 million years. And the Buddha continued, 1,600 years of human life make one night and day in the devas, for the devas that delight in others' creations. 16,000 such years make up the life period of these devas. But there is the possibility, Visakha, that some woman or man, by observing the Sabbath in all its 8 parts, when body breaks up after death, may be reborn in the company of these devas. It was in this connection that I said, a poor thing is human sovereignty to set beside heavenly bliss. That's the end of the sutta. So the last one is the highest heaven in the sensual desire realm. That means the 6th heaven above our human plane. Their lifespan in terms of human years is 9,216 million years. But we must remember, although their lifespan is so long in our eyes, to them actually the Buddha said is 16,000 years. 16,000 years, and to them it's actually 16,000 years, because when we have a very enjoyable life, the time flies very, very fast, That's why the Buddha said there are beings who live in the heavens for such a long, long time, and when it is time for them to pass away, they are still not satisfied. They still have so many things to do, so many things to enjoy, and they think that life is so short. But imagine somebody in hell who is suffering. One day is so long to pass through. And That's why in certain religions, for example in Christianity, they say that life in hell is eternity. It would appear like eternity when you are suffering so much in hell that time seems to go so slowly by. The other thing we notice in this sutta is that the Buddha said, if we keep the 8 precepts, the chances of being reborn in heaven is very great. That's why the Buddha encouraged that all of us, all the lay people, should keep the 8 precepts at least once a week. During the Buddha's days, they used the lunar calendar. But nowadays, since we are working 5 days a week or 6 days a week, we have to find a day which is convenient for you to keep the 8 precepts. Like Sunday is a good day to keep the 8 precepts. If you can go to temple or Buddhist society or hermitage to keep the 8 precepts is very good. If not, you can do it at home. And don't be like the average normal person who does not take any trouble to keep the precepts, because the Buddha said, as we heard earlier, that most people, after they pass away, most of them are reborn into the woeful planes. Few will be reborn back with a human body or go up to the heavenly realm. So we don't want to be like the average normal person. Now the next sutta is 3.8.72. On a certain occasion, the Venerable Ananda was staying at Kosambi in Gosita Park. Now a certain house father, who was a follower of an ascetic mendicant, a beggar, came to see the Venerable Ananda. On coming to him, he greeted him and sat down at one side. So seated, he said this to the Venerable Ananda: "Pray, worthy Ananda, whose doctrine is well taught? Who are rightly conducted in the world? Who are welfarers in the world?" And Venerable Ananda replied, "Now, house father, in this matter I will put a question to you. Do you answer my question as you think fit. What think you, house father? They who preach a doctrine for the abandoning of passion, hatred and delusion, is their doctrine well preached or not? What do you think of this?" I just stopped here to comment. This is a case, you see, Ananda is taught by the Buddha. When somebody asks a question like this, whose doctrine is well taught, is difficult to answer straight. If you answer straight, you have to say that my teacher's doctrine is well taught, and that person would find it quite difficult to accept. But he put a counter question to him, and this is the way of dealing with that question. So he replied, "The doctrine of such sir is well preached. That is my opinion." And Ananda said, "Then, house father, they who so conduct themselves as to abandon passion, hatred and delusion, are they well conducted in the world?" "Certainly they are, sir." "Now what think you, house father? They whose passion, whose hatred, whose delusion is abandoned, cut down at the root, made like a palm tree stump, made such as not to become of a nature not to spring up again in future, are such welfarers in the world or not?" And he said, "Such, sir, are welfarers in the world, I think." And Ananda said, "Then you have admitted this much. They who preach a doctrine for the abandoning of passion, hatred and delusion, their doctrine is well preached. They who are so conducted as to abandon passion, hatred and delusion are well conducted in the world. They whose passion is abandoned are welfarers in the world." And the man said, "It is wonderful, sir, it is marvelous. Here is no trumpeting of one's own creed, no depreciation of another's creed, but just teaching of Dhamma in its proper sphere. You have spoken of man's welfare, and self is not brought in question. Now you yourself, worthy Ananda, preach Dhamma for the abandoning of passion, hatred and delusion, and your doctrine is well preached. You conduct yourself so as to abandon passion, hatred and delusion, and you are well conducted in the world. In you, worthy Ananda, these are abandoned, cut down at the root, made like a palm tree stump. Surely you are a welfarer in the world." "Excellent, sir, it is excellent. It is as if one should raise up what has fallen, open up what has hidden, pointed out the way to one gone astray, holding up a shining light so that they who have eyes may see forms. Thus has Dhamma been expounded by the worthy Ananda in diverse ways. I myself, worthy Ananda, go for refuge to the Buddha, to Dhamma, to the order of monks. Let Master Ananda accept me as a lay follower from this day forth, so long as life shall last as one who has taken refuge." That's the end of the sutta. So here you see the Venerable Ananda speaks Dhamma without bringing in the self. The Buddha taught that when we speak Dhamma, we should not be personal, we should not bring in the self. We can talk about Dhamma and criticize Dhamma, but we should not try to bring in oneself or another person on a personal level. Again, at the last part, you find that this man took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Bhikkhu Sangha. And then he said that he is a lay follower. Let Master Ananda accept me as a lay follower from this day forth. He's a lay follower of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha.